Yes, we're back, we're back, we're back. And up next, we're going to be talking about giving individuals, you, everybody here, control over their own data using open source decentralized web nodes. We'll also have a panel and a presentation here. Daniel's already up on stage. He'll be starting the presentation. And then you'll get to meet Angie, Mike, Marcus, and Nolin. This group is from people from TBD, but also from Dambu Tech and from Google Cloud. So please give a huge round of applause to all of our presenters, including Daniel. Let me give you a hand. Enjoy.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about building the DWeb and hopefully bring us one step closer through a collaboration between Google Cloud, TBD, and Diff. My name is Daniel Buckner. I'm the head of decentralized identity at TBD, which is a business unit of Block. So to set the problem and kind of boot you up on this area of technology, our thesis is that we need a more use-centric web. Today, for the longest time, we've had a provider-based web where you kind of yeet your data into these silos and you don't have much control. And I think the web we want is one that stores data with you, gives you control of your identity, and puts you in the driver's seat. So before we start, I think we kind of need to understand this collaboration in reference to something that's already happened in the past, which is HTML5. So if you remember, it was 17 years ago, the first initial writings of HTML5 were constructed by Google and Microsoft and others. And at that time, I was at Mozilla, where I was working on some of these foundational pieces that brought the web from a document-centric experience to more of a lively app-like experience. There was amazing things that were introduced to the web platform, like media capture, local storage, and others, that made our job as developers easier to create compelling experiences. But since then, we've had great centralization in the web. And I think it's time for an effort that is at least as ambitious as HTML5, and that's why we call this thing Web 5, is because really, it's not about a bunch of shitcoins and blockchain stuff. It's about introducing primitives to the web that it's lacked since its initial state. I'll talk about two of these today, but briefly go over all three. One is DIDs. So the web was born without identity, right? That's why you have user accounts everywhere. You don't actually own your ID. You don't bring your ID from place to place. If you do, it's through a social auth, and it's not yours. Verifiable credentials, ways to form trust on the internet. We haven't really had them. Verifiable credentials do that with reusable trust proofs that you can take with you. And then the last one, the biggest one, the one we're here today to talk about, DWeb nodes, which are a form of personal data store, where your apps can store data with you and minimize the amount of data that has to be on a centralized server. So to drill in a little bit, decentralized identifiers, right? IDs are really the root of your identity. You see them all over online, from email addresses with providers to handles on Twitter, Reddit, usernames. You're just a row in someone else's database. That's really what it is. And our belief is that you should own your IDs. So we've worked on a DID method. DIDs stand for Decentralized Identifiers. They're a W3C international standard as of 2 years ago that's moving towards browser adoption. We've created one method that reuses BitTorrent, the actual BitTorrent network, to provide you with identities backed by strong cryptography. These IDs have a couple things they feature. The ability to look up an ID and get back a set of public keys and endpoints, sort of like you would do with DNS routing. Endpoints that would point to where Alice here would have her content, so Bob could look it up. The next one is personal data stores. Really, this is the hub of the use-centric web. Today, as I talked about, you're putting your data in all these silos. We think that your data should live with you across all your devices and potentially some cloud endpoints if people want to contact you when you're offline. These DWeb nodes support any app type. You can build really anything you want on them. They're replicated across your devices. They feature strong encryption for the data that you want private, and they handle large binary formats and everything you would need to build a legitimate application. All serverless, I should note. So you don't have to focus on anything but the front end of your application and let the user's data store be the place where the data exists. So just to kind of give you one example of a feature that we've introduced with a one-line polyfill that you can come see us about at the TBD booth. It's a single line. It's much like HTML5 had polyfills and shims in the early days, is decentralized resource locators. So making this possible in the web of today, you can kind of see with URLs, and I tried to figure out a metaphor to show this, and I thought the best way is just to show the actual URLs. With traditional URLs, you don't have HTTPS. really that's the CA system, right? A hierarchy of trust. Everything in the internet is based on it. And then you have a provider who is leased an identifier that they don't even own, and everything is at their servers. Your username, Alice, above, that's just some row in their database, and of course, whatever random REST API they create. Contrast that with DRLs. They're anchored in the DWeb, right? So in the case of decentralized identifiers based on BitTorrent, you're looking up someone's ID directly from a decentralized network. You're locating their personal data store, and then depending on what protocols they've installed in their data store, you can then look up all sorts of data. In this case, it's a profile protocol that offers the same functionality as fetching an avatar. There could be others, though. You could have private encrypted medical data. You could have social media. Anything you want can be installed in these personal data stores. So to bring this one step closer to reality, we are actually announcing today that DWN's DWeb nodes are being offered for free as a community instance, as a joint partnership between Google Cloud, Decentralized Identity Foundation, and TBD. This means this is going to give you free access as a developer to start building true decentralized applications. Each user who you onboard through one of your apps gets 1 GB of free storage. Think about this as a very decentralized form of G Drive or OneDrive. It gets you the ability to start with decentralized applications and really understand what this technology can do. I encourage you all to jump in and listen to the panel we have who's going to dig into a lot of these concepts. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angie Jones, and I actually took this very stage last year to introduce We Are Developers to DWeb Nodes. So it's really exciting to see how far this technology has come. So we have a great panel today. I have, starting on the very end, Marcus Sabadello, who is a member of the steering committee for the Decentralized Identity Foundation, also known as DIF. So DIF is the foundation that introduced the DWeb nodes as a standard. Give it up for Marcus. And then I have Nalin Mattel, who is a product manager for Google Cloud. So again, as Daniel mentioned, Google Cloud is providing first-party hosting of DWeb nodes to make getting started even easier. Give it up for Nalin. And then we have Mike Brock, who is the CEO of TBD, which is a business unit that's focused on open source technologies, and it's part of Block Incorporated. Now, TBD implemented DIF standards to make the DWeb nodes an actual SDK that you can get started with. All right, so welcome, gentlemen. Let's jump right in, shall we? Yes? All right, so Mike, can you tell us more about the specific problems that DWeb nodes solve for? Why do we need this technology?
Yeah, I think there's, oh, do I not have, is my mic not on? I appear to not, oh, there I go. now you guys can hear me. I think it's not just one specific problem, but I think the theme that we started out on this path when we announced Web 5 several years ago, and everybody thought we were joking about this idea, was to really lean into this idea that we're moving into a world now where there's increasing concern and trust in institutions, in a sense that we're losing control over our own identity and our own data, and of course, we saw with the Web 3 movement several years ago that there's an increasing amount of interest to find ways in which to provide both identity sovereignty and data sovereignty for people for many reasons, like one, for consumer privacy, for security, for redundancy and reliability. There's many reasons why decentralization is good. I mean, actually, today, look at, we have another example of centralization today. Some of you may have noticed that half of the world's online services were basically offline because of whatever's happening at CrowdStrike. It certainly has affected my flight. Doesn't look like I'll be returning today. But the idea that we can take advantage of this massive shift that's happening. We basically have a supercomputer in our pocket now with like terabytes of storage, with increasing amounts of wireless bandwidth. We have 5G and the capacity to really start thinking about ways in which we can actually host our own data on our own phone, on our own, web instances in the cloud. And build a system of data sovereignty, but more importantly, provide a new substrate on which you can actually build truly decentralized applications, where the applications are able to work from data that is in your own control, tied to your own digital identity, that is privacy preserving, where the data only lives where you want it to live, that it's only disclosed to the people and entities that you want to disclose it to. That to me is like a really important thing to get to, because I think that's how a lot of people thought the internet would be. They thought it would be this like major democratizing force. And we haven't built the protocols to enable that until now. And so I'm super excited to be at this moment and be releasing this technology today to show people that this is possible. And I think that the world is ripe for starting to think about how we restructure our digital lives. And so that's the vision. And it's going to, and obviously, it's a protocol and SDKs, and so this is a very developer-focused technology. And so we're looking to developers to now think about with these new foundational technologies, how can you rethink applications? How can you rethink social media? How can you rethink digital identity? How can you rethink commerce in a world where data doesn't have to be centralized? It can be decentralized and controlled by you. I think that's a major paradigm shift, and I think that this is the very beginning of some really interesting innovation over the next 3 to 5 years. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's really exciting as a developer to think about the dream coming true of serverless app development, and I feel like this is what this unlocks for us. So Nulin, how does this help streamline app development?
Yeah, so I think traditionally, if you're building an application, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that the data is stored securely, transmitted to your servers securely, like the right people have access to it. And this is all a heavy investment you have to make. It's very important, but when you're a small startup or trying to find product market fit and iterate and build what your customers are looking for, it's a lot of tax really that you have to spend time on. So I think, and then you have like regulatory space evolves. You have to again invest more time in that. This new model where the user is holding data in their own data lockers on their own nodes kind of reduces all of that complexity, if not eliminates it, because you don't have to worry about transmitting data. Your application or your agent kind of lives alongside the data instead of the data being sent to the application. And I think that's like really transformative. The cool thing here is that while that's all true, you're still maintaining like the properties of a decentralized application, right? So you have interoperability. Maybe you have a to-do list application, a DWeb app that's a to-do list application. You're storing all of your to-dos there. And then you see an LLM that promises, or an application that says, hey, we're going to use AI to get your to-do lists done for you, right? Just send us your to-do list. Well, traditionally, these two companies have to use APIs to like integrate with each other. Now, using like open schemas on these DWeb nodes, that AI application can just say, I know how to read your to-dos, just give me permission, and I'll start checking them off for you. So I think that's really exciting, this combination of users owning their own data, controlling it, but still maintaining the interoperability of decentralized applications.
Yeah, that's super powerful. I always see like maybe features on this app that I like and features on that app. And if I have my data with me, I can enjoy the best of both worlds. That's beautiful. Okay. So we talked a lot about, Nulin, you just mentioned open schemas. Mike, you talked about open standards. And of course, we have the SDK, which is open source software. Why are these like open standards and open software so important? And if we could start with you, Marcus.
Yeah, well, at the Decentralized Identity Foundation, also known as DIF, first of all, we're really excited about this partnership. And at DIF, we've been incubating both open standards and open source related to decentralized identity technologies for several years. Daniel mentioned some of them in the introduction: decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, and the decentralized web nodes themselves. And I think open standards have always been important for transparency, for interoperability, also for innovation, right? If there's a closed standard, if you don't know how it works, then you have a much more closed system. And so I would argue that in decentralized systems, such as the one that decentralized web nodes enable, standards are even more important than in traditional systems, right? Because that's the whole point. You don't want the central authority to control the data, but you also don't want the central authority to control the mechanisms and the standards, how it works. And so with decentralized web nodes, you don't have to ask TPD for permission. You don't have to ask Google Cloud for permission if you want to run one of those things, if you want to develop applications on top of those things. You can just do it, right? And that's what open standards enable, and that's what made the web great, and that's what will also make the Web 5 vision great that Daniel explained in his introduction.
Yes, wonderful. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here because I've heard you very eloquently talk about other web standards that are open, ones that we use on a daily basis, and we don't even really think about it anymore. If you want to touch on that for just a minute.
Well, I mean, I think most developers, at least experienced ones, recognize the importance of standards, right? For an old person like myself, I can remember back to the 1990s and the early 2000s, the browser wars. It used to be the case that web developers had to spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with like the differences in like how CSS style sheets rendered in Internet Explorer versus in Firefox versus like Opera and then Google Chrome came along and you had Safari, and Google, I think, was probably deserves more credit than anyone else for, I think, alongside Firefox, for really, I think, bringing an end to the browser compatibility nightmare that we used to live through over 2 decades ago. And the ability today now to like actually just like know that as long as you're like writing against like web standards, you can generally expect that your website's going to look good in any browser. So standards are just really important because interoperability is what provides a substrate for innovation. Where there's no interoperability, it's usually because some vested interest is trying to prevent competition. They're trying to create vendor lock-in. They're trying to make it so other companies cannot compete, or they can't be a vehicle for providing those services. You have to go and use these guys over here because it becomes too much of an investment to support all of the different standards. So common standards, I think, are critical for an open internet and for innovation. Now, sometimes we need new standards, and that's what we're talking about here today. We think that the internet has been missing a really important standard, which is an identity standard for the internet. And so DIDs, I think, are sort of the major missing protocol that we've needed on the internet for a very, very long time to really create a common basis by which we can actually build identifiers and identity in a way that all services can understand, all services can exchange information on, and can really allow us to kind of get to that world of digital sovereignty, where we're not necessarily having to outsource our identity to other companies. And we see the consequences of that all the time, which is data breaches, hacks. I talked about this before, but the reason why we're stuck in that world is there's been no open standard. And like to just further answer your question around like getting people who are maybe less technical to appreciate this is like if you're on a video call, a Zoom call, a Google Meet call, FaceTime call, I mean, you're using an open standard, which is H.264, the video encoding codec. You're using the web standards behind that. You're using TCP/IP, which is the protocol that the internet uses in order to like route data packets across the internet. So almost everything we do on the internet is sitting atop a set of open standards, and so it just that is the substrate of innovation. And I think we've been missing some important standards that have led us to build the web in a certain way up until now that I think has a lot of downsides, especially in the age of AI, where I think privacy concerns are now hyper accelerated. And we see that there's a lot of emphasis now around I know that Android and iOS are trying to find ways to run models on the phone locally. That's good for like privacy. But as we start to try and move to more of that kind of model, I think it's going to become even more important, to have some way of not just like running the model on your phone, but having the data on your phone and having the model like work with the data on the phone and then interacting with the outside world in a far more semantic way. That ultimately like protects us from the fear that I think a lot of people have, which is pervasive surveillance because of AI, and that digital sovereignty, that digital identity will give us, I think, gives us a powerful tool in which to resist some of those dangers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Mike. Marcus, so let's say that I'm convinced about D-Web Nodes. Can you share a little bit about how do I get started? What does the integration look like? What strategies do you think we should employ for users to become more comfortable using this type of technology?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be very honest, a decentralized system, I think, is somehow always a little bit more challenging to use and to get used to initially than just a centralized platform where you can go and create an account and recover your password and all of that. So it does probably take a little bit of effort for users to get familiar with the concept, to start using it. But I think we're making great steps there by having a community instance of a decentralized web node, by having Google Cloud offering a way to host that. And I think the interest will increase a lot, and I think there will be a lot of demand for two reasons. On one hand, I think we're all becoming much more aware of the importance of being in control of our data, of managing our data. We've heard about mass surveillance economy, or data leaks, security problems. So I think it has become a mainstream idea, this concept that personal data and identity should be under my control. So I think this will create quite a lot of attraction for solutions like decentralized web nodes. But the other thing is also that a system where digital identity, where personal data is decentralized and under people's control, is not just about creating a bit more privacy and a bit more security, but it enables a whole lot of new applications or new usages. The idea to separate the data from the applications, the idea of having data portability, being able to take it with me. It's really a shift in how the decentralized or how the identity works online, and it's much more than just a place where you store your files, right? You have to think of this kind of technology as something like a digital representation of who I am, right? A manifestation of myself in the digital world. And so with that, I think there will just become, there will be so many new opportunities, so many new things that we cannot do today, and I think that will be a big driver for people to start using it. I think it will become as common and as normal in everyday use as, let's say, an email address, right? We have an email address, we have a mailbox, so now we have a way to also have a place online where we don't have our emails, but our representation, who we are, our data, our files, and so on. So I think these two things will drive that, the increased privacy and control, and all the new capabilities that which are offered by this, and by hosting community instances with Google Cloud and TBD, I think will make it very easy to get started. And in addition to that, of course, there are a lot of resources, documentation, blog posts, and so on.
Thank you. I want to double click into the Google Cloud instance. So Nulin, I'm sure this is a question that's on the top of most folks' minds in the room. What attracted Google, such a huge company, to this specific decentralized technology?
Yeah, so first of all, like, most of you probably don't know, but Google's been involved in the blockchain, decentralized Web3, now Web5 space since 2018, right? So we've been indexing blockchain data, making it available in BigQuery, so you can query blockchain data with SQL, much like you do your off-chain data. We have a fully managed node product called Blockchain Node Engine. So we're investing a lot, both in terms of like making the data available, as well as like developer primitives like node infrastructure. So we're really excited about innovation in this space, right? And I think the bottom line is we've been now building decentralized application for close to a decade, like 7 years, 8 years, and still like the mainstream applications are DeFi at best, right? And so where are all the other applications of blockchain that we've been promised? And I think a lot of it is, like, this isn't the only problem. I think Marcus alluded to like wallets and education around the space, but a big part of the problem is data. Like, how do you store a user's driver's license or health data on-chain privately or securely, right? So maybe you use ZK proofs or new emerging technologies. That work's really important, and those innovations are important to bring us there. But I think what TBD is doing is like rethinking this from like really fresh thinking and saying like, how would we reimagine how data is stored? Maybe this data doesn't have to live on chain, and we can still do really interesting things. Because I think once you have the data, that's the first step to you being able to monetize your data. As Mike mentioned, in an AI world that we're all being thrust into, like, you want to be fairly compensated for, AI models training on your data or inferring on your data. And so this creates a path to that. I personally, this is not a Google Cloud view, but I personally really care about healthcare and making that more accessible to more people, right? And how do you do that? Maybe through early detection. Well, we have all this data that people have. We have the models. If we can use these technologies to bridge that together so you can safely train AI models on health data, well, I think we can do early detection of a lot of morbidities. Like today, I think we already have the technology. So I'm really excited about this on a number of fronts.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I want to thank each of you for not just joining us on the panel, but also for working together, for collaborating to make such innovative technology and offering this innovative technology for free for developers to be able to build whatever it is that they need to build. So thank you. Where can they go to learn more? Any of you can share some resources with the audience.
Yeah, so I think Diff recently did a blog post about this, but yesterday they launched a community node on Google Cloud. So if you want, you can always run your own node, of course. This is like decentralized, and that's the whole point. But if you want to get started really quickly, you can use a community node on Google Cloud and just start building. All of the docs are there between Diff and TBD on how to get started. There's a lot of great tutorials. So we're really excited to be able to offer that kind of community node for DWeb developers to get started.
Wonderful, wonderful. Anything else?
I agree with that. You can also join DIF. DIF is a non-profit organization. We have working groups where we work on the standards, and open source. We have hackathons from time to time and Discord channels and so on. So we'll also be happy to welcome new members to Diff and support you, but also get your ideas and your input of what to do with this technology.
Beautiful. So that's the great thing about like these open technologies is that you can contribute any features that you feel like are missing, or if this is something that excites you, then you're welcome to join the community and add whatever you want and give back in that way as well. All right. So thank you all for coming and listening to us. If you have questions or you want to learn more, we are going to be at the TBD booth. It's the big yellow booth in Hall 2.2. We have some lightning talks going there starting at 1 o'clock. So if you want to come hear more, or like I said, if you just have questions, you want to talk shop, we have developers at the booth as well. All right? Thanks so much.
Thank you all. I really enjoyed that. Let's give them another round of applause. I think they deserved it. Thank you for that. Now, up next, we're going to be talking about collaborative intelligence. You know, like not us versus the machine, but working together. We're going to have another panel discussion, and I'll see you back in about 10 minutes or so. So, see you then. Bye-bye.